Today I'm going to show you guys how to make your earbud wrap project. So the earbud wrap, just a quick little easy project. We use general woodworking skills and tools machines. Some of them we used before in here, like tools machines, some we have not. So we're going to go through and show you how to make the project. And this is what it looks like when your project is somewhat almost finished. This one just doesn't have the finish on it of like either a stain or maybe even like a just a general paint. So the first thing you will do after, well, once you're ready to make the project, is you're going to need a blank scrap piece of wood. And see me for these, I can give you one of these for you to start your project with. So after you have your blank scrap piece of wood, you're going to need a template that kind of looks like this here. Be careful with the templates. Please try not to break these things. We're going to put the template right on top. And usually what I suggest to do is try to line up the corners here. So at the very bottom of this like little key part, I like to have it so one flat side is here and one other flat side is kind of really close to the edge. It just saves time, especially when you're cutting. You don't have to cut those things out completely. So we're going to put that right on top. Grab a pencil and trace out the outline. Go the whole way around. Now please use a pencil, don't use a marker. If you make a mistake with a pencil, it's not a big deal. We can always erase it later, but a marker, we can't necessarily fix it if you make a mistake. Trace everything out. Don't forget the groove at the very bottom and these little curved edges. And last but not least, let's do the circle on the inside at the very top. So you should have a piece that looks just like what we have right here. Next thing we need to do is, of course, we're going to have to go through, cut this out, which is going to be using a couple different processes and machines. Before you do that, though, eventually we're going to have to drill this out. It just helps out if you center punch that hole first. That way we know exactly where the drill bit should be going. Take a center punch, put it directly in the center, right here, just like that. We're going to take our hand and just give it a nice little tap. That way we have a small little dent in the center where this hole will be created later. Step of our project, we're going to want to get rid of any extra wood that's left over. And to use this, you can use a couple different machines. I'm just going to use this opportunity to show you how to use the radial arm saw in front of us. So what we want to get rid of is this material right over here. So we can take the radial arm saw, cut away the small little chunk. That way we don't have to worry about sanding forever trying to get rid of all this other stuff around the outside. That just would not make any sense. So we're going to use the radial arm saw to make a cross cut right across the top. And if I take like a pencil or marker or something and draw a line right across, we're going to make sure that we're on the right side of that line. So not where my finger is located, but on the opposite side, which is right here. Make sure the blade is on this side, not this side. So if we line everything up, put it against the fence, we're going to zoom in a little bit closer, give you a better perspective. If you take a look where that blade's located, we're going to pull it so it's just in line. Line it up. The blade is on the right-hand side of the line, so we want to cut away all that extra material. Now when you operate this machine, notice how it's directly up against the fence. That's where a piece of wood is located. It's never out here, up against the fence. And there's a couple different areas you should be keeping your hands. Just a quick review. This green box over here is where you should be keeping your hands, or your left hand. Make sure you hold it nice and still. No fingers or anything should be outside. Keep it nice and clamped down. And of course at the very top here, there's a handle, which is right here. That's where your hand should be going to make the radial arm saw move. Okay? We're going to go through and I'll show you what the cut looks like. And I'll leave you guys right here for a perspective view. Turn the machine off, wait for it to stop. A little scrap piece that's left over here, never go in and grab it. It's not safe. That blade is really exposed, you can hurt yourself. Instead, what I usually like to suggest to do is wait either for it to stop, or you can take your piece of wood, knock it out of the way. Okay, never reach in there and grab it. Well, now you can see we got rid of all that scrap that's left over, and we do not have to sand that later. This guy here. Throw this in the scrap bucket, and then we're ready for the next step. Now we have to get rid of the excess on the side right here. So this side up here, I mean, since we have our template and we drew it up against the edge, we don't have to worry about cutting away anything on this side besides this a little bit later on the scroll saw. But down here you can see there's like a little bit like a 1/4 inch of wood left over. We need to get rid of that. The easiest way to do that is if you take a trip over to one of the band saws, preferably one that has a fence like this one right here. So what we need to do is we need to figure out, okay, how wide do we have to make the cut? And I'm just going to tell you right off the bat, I know that from one side to another, this is 2 inches wide. So what we have to do is we have to set our fence to 2 inches wide. So we're going to loosen up our handle. We're going to move the fence closer to the blade itself. And this is what I suggest. Instead of lining up your board, it's a better idea if you take a ruler, put it up against the fence, just like that. And then you should be moving the fence in line with the ruler and lining it up right at that 2-inch mark. So, which is right there. Perfect. You can see now it's perfectly lined up right there with the 2-inch mark. Once you're done, lock your handle in place, which is down here. Push it down, and then we're ready to make our cut with our piece of wood. Just make sure when you're making your cuts that the piece of wood is always up against the fence. You never want to have it so it's starting to face out or away. The fence is like your guide. It helps make a perfectly straight, even cut. Never keep your hands in line with like where the blade will be passing. You can push it and guide it through, but once you get to a certain point, you're probably going to have to use a push stick, this guy here. Push it through the rest of the way, and make sure you have a partner on the opposite side to help catch the wood. When you're done using the bandsaw, just like with any other project, wait for it to slow down before you move any further. If you have to reach in there, either slow down or wait for it to slow down, or you can take a scrap piece of wood or grab it from the rear side, grab it and take it out. Scrap goes in the bucket. You're going to be left over with something that looks just like that. Notice how we trimmed away all that extra material. It's no longer left. And all we have to focus on is like rounding the corners and then cutting these grooves out, and then maybe the hole a little bit later. Next thing we want to do is we want to knock out this small little area here, like that little like notch where our earbud, like the headphone like jack part goes, the plug. So in order to do that, we're going to do it just like we did with our phone stand project. We're going to make 2 cuts on either side with the bandsaw, and then we're going to take a chisel and knock out that small little chunk. So the first thing you do, we're going to take the fence, move it out of the way. We don't need that. Blade guard, make sure it sets to the proper height, 1 finger distance above your piece of wood. So that's considered safe right now. We're ready to go. We're going to keep our hands on either side, turn the machine on, and just run it through very slowly and easily. Take your time. Remember, when you get to the corner, right down here, turn the machine off, wait for it to stop. You never want to make a back cut, which is basically leaving it on, pulling it out. That's not safe. You could twist or make the blade break. Finished making the small little cuts on the left hand side where you see that notch is supposed to be broken off. So next up, we're going to knock it out using one of these mallets, and we have a screwdriver blade, except this one's a little bit different. It's like the ones you made in 6th grade. This one I have it filed down so it's a sharp point, kind of like a chisel. So we're going to be splitting it apart with that. So let's go through that process right now. So we're going to be lining up our little chisel part with the edge of that line right there, nice and straight, and then we're going to take our mallet, tap on the top until that piece pops out. Should pop out just like that. So it's going to have like a nice little break. Now, one thing that might happen is if you look at the opposite side, we have like a little bit that's left over right here. You can always, if you need to, flip it over to the other side, and we can trim this part off once more. Let me turn so you can see a little better right there. Alright, so we just broke that off. Now we have a little bit of a cleaner like break, just like that. Now we're going to be focusing on doing a little bit of sanding. There's 4 total edges or corners that you're going to be sanding all together. There's my 4th finger. So we're just going to do these edges here that I've colored in. The very top, near the rounded part, and near the very bottom. We're going to be using the disc sander for this process. Just make sure you follow all the safety rules. I'm not going to go over that in today's video, but just make sure you're being safe, keeping your fingers away from this at all times, okay? Keep everything flat on the table, turn the machine off, and keep the thing moving back and forth. We're not going to worry about this inside radius right here. or this inside part. We'll do that on the scroll saw a little bit later, just the outside radiuses, okay? Now comes time to make that small little hole right in the center for where like the earbuds actually pass through. So what we're going to do first before we start adjusting this machine is we're going to be putting our project piece in a vise. Open up the vise, and what we want to do is align the center of where this hole is going to be passing with the center of the vise. Right there we see the opening. That way we're not going to be smashing the drill bit into the sides of the vise jaws. Open it up, and usually I like to keep it near the top. You don't need to put it near the bottom. Open the vise up, there we go. Clamp it down, make sure it's nice and snug. Good. We're gonna put this to the side and hold onto that later. Next step, we're gonna have to get the proper size drill bit. We're gonna be using a spade bit for this part. I would suggest using 11/16. That's the correct size spade bit. I keep this inside of the cabinet where the Mario and like the woodworking stuff is located. Let's take the chuck apart. I'm going to take the chuck key, put it inside the chuck, push and hold nice and tight, turn it to the left to loosen it up, and if you turn it enough, that drill bit should fall right out. Just like that. Put your drill bit inside, the exact opposite, place it inside the chuck jaws. Tighten it down by hand by turning it that way towards the classroom space. And then to finish it off, stick the chuck key back inside, press and hold, nice and tight. Turn it to the right. It's not going to turn a lot, but it's going to turn just a little bit to make it nice and snug. All right, we're ready to go. Let's take the vise and put it on top. And the next step, we only want to drill halfway through our project. So we don't necessarily want to drill the whole way through, because this is not what I consider like a finishing bit. It's going to tear apart anything that's going to come through the opposite side. So in order to adjust it so it doesn't go the whole way through, let's take you to a different view so you can see from the side. We'll zoom out a little bit. On the side of this drill press itself, there's these little spacer things right here on this black bar. We can wind those down to the point where when we take the handles and start to turn them, it'll stop at a certain location. It won't drill the whole way through our project. So I went ahead and adjusted everything, and if we take a look right where the drill bit's coming down through, if I try to lower it, like the spade part, like the bottom part, not the point, only goes about halfway through our project. That's what you want. Here's how this next part's gonna go down. You're gonna drill until you feel the stopper, hit the stopper at the very top, turn the machine off. We're gonna take the board, flip it over, do the same thing from the other side. The part of the spade bit that comes to a point is going to poke through the other side. It's going to create a hole through the other side, which will guide it once we flip it over. This is the easiest way to make it like a clean hole with your spade bit. There's that hole I was talking about. Flip it around to the other side. Let's do it again. Now if we take a look at it, we have a perfect hole that was just created just like that. So if you use this method for creating a hole with a spade bit, it'll give you a nice clean hole. If you don't use this method, it's going to take the wood chips and kind of blow them out from the opposite side. It's not going to look too pretty. Last machine we're going to be messing around with is the scroll saw. We're going to be getting rid of all these little areas right here that I've colored in with pencil. So this is going to be one of the most difficult things for you guys and girls to do. Just be patient, take your time, go slow, and use the tips I'm about to go over. First, check to see if the blade's tight. Sounds good to me. Next thing, hold down has to be adjusted. Loosen up the knob. Wood goes underneath next to the blade, on top. Make sure it's nice and tight. Good. Now we can turn the machine on. This is the easiest way to start. Most people I see sometimes, not sure why, they want to start from right here in the center and try to cut straight down. That's not what you want to do. We're going to start right here at the corner, one of these corners, and just slowly start cutting in along that line. Cut directly on the line, go as slow as you can, okay? And what you'll see when I'm doing this, I'm going to start by cutting just like this, and after I get the notch started, I'll slowly start to turn it so I get my blade aligned with that line on the very bottom, and I'll start making the cut the whole way through. Watch exactly what I do with my hands and the blade. If you take your time on the scroll saw, it's going to save you in the long run, and you have a nice, really nice looking cut. Looks just like mine. If you rush through it, it's not going to turn out so pretty, and it's very difficult to try and make it look a little bit nicer. And if you mess up like some of these edges on the inside, don't use an electric sander like the disc sander. It's not going to be a safe situation trying to sand it. So next thing we want to do is we have these corners, 4 corners that go the whole way around our project. We want to take those corners and kind of round them over with a file. That way we don't have any problems when we try to wrap our earbuds around it. What normally happens is if you have like a square corner like this, 1, paint doesn't like to stick to it, and 2, with your earbuds, it usually will try to, over like a period of time, those edges will wear on your cord and break it down. It's not going to be nice anymore. So what we're going to do is you can either put your project in a vise to do this part, or you can hold it in your hand, whichever you prefer. Does not matter to me. But we're going to need another file, just like the one we have here. Make sure it has at least one flat edge. It should not be completely round, or you should not be using a rounded edge. We're going to take those edges, and we're just going to very carefully round them over with a file, back and forth. And we're focusing mainly on this center part here. So now if you take a look at your project piece, right at the edges here, we now smooth those over with the file, and they're no longer going to be pointed. That's exactly what you're looking for. Finally, to end your project, you're going to be sanding with sandpaper. I have 2 different types. We're going to start with a medium, which is usually the darkest out of the 2, and end with fine. It's important to go through the sanding process and get your piece of wood completely smooth. If it's not smooth and you have all these like little fuzzy spots left over, like right here in this area and on the outside, your project's not going to turn out too well. So what you'll do, take a piece of medium sandpaper, fold it up, and I have it inside the Mario cabinet, and just sand all of your edges. We're going to start with medium, sand everything so it's completely smooth. Get rid of all the rough spots, and especially if you're doing like a natural finish like wood stain, you want to get rid of all your pencil lines, make sure they're not left over. And this is a good point in time where I should say, if you're working on your project, not call for cleanup, instead of writing your name on there and having to go through the process of sanding it later, it might be a good idea to take a piece of masking tape, put your name on the tape, stick it on the top, okay? And one tip I'd like to give for you guys for when you're working on your projects and sanding, sand in circles. If you take a look at the wood, some of it might feel like it's furry or fuzzy. All these little wood fibers are sticking up. If you go in a circle, it makes them forces them back and forth, and eventually they will break off. When you're sanding and you think you feel as though you're done, just do like a surface check, run your hand over it, and your wood should feel as smooth as like a piece of glass or like a piece of really smooth plastic. If you're not sure, bring it to me. I'll double check over it to make sure that everything is smooth according to like what I think is correct. If you would proceed without sanding or smoothing anything, your finish is not going to turn out too well. So make sure you have me check it. And then finally, once I give it the approval, you can go and do your finish of choice, either stain or you can do craft paint.